As I had mentioned before, I got the pleasure of meeting Jeff Slotnick years ago as part of the regional vice presidents for ASIS, and over the years I got to know Jeff even more, and even just recently started doing some business with Jeff. Well, I should say Jeff had turned me on to a company that he is involved with, and we are so excited to start to do some work with them at the end of the month. And not just that, but some of the people that we know and together, like friends of Chuck. You know, Chuck is great, and if anybody's been to GSX or any of the events, and you go to Texas Night over there before GSX, one of the greatest things to do. And Chuck is probably one of the most easily approachable people, security influencer in the world. And certainly I have a lot of respect for him and what he does, not just for the association, but for the industry. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to take this away from Jeff, but these are some of the people that Jeff and I were able to get to know over the years and share some good times with. But Jeff is certainly a very highly regarded person within the association, and anybody who's been in here long enough has probably heard of Jeff Slotnick. So, Jeff, please tell us a little bit more about yourself, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Sure, I appreciate that. Well, professionally, I own a risk security and risk consultancy. Most of my clients are senior security executives that need that extra hand. We do a lot of risk, threat, and vulnerability assessment, ESRM implementations, corporate security programs. In fact, for one client right now, I'm writing their corporate security plan and policy. ASIS wise, I think I have served in every capacity of ASIS with the exception of the professional certification board and the foundation. So I went all the way up from chapter secretary to the North American board. I'm currently serving as a CVP and spent time as a council chair prior to communities, as chair of the Physical Security Council and the Professional Standards Board. I was a director there for about 6 years. So it's something I'm very passionate about and something I enjoy. I like giving back to our society. I think it's important. You know, if we all contribute, you know, I frequently say I don't need to know everything. I just need to know someone who does, you know, and that makes life a whole lot easier, especially as a consultant. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So tonight we're going to be talking about the school standards as it relates to ASIS and what they are rolling out. And Jeff is the one of the experts on that, and he was so gracious to be here to talk to us about that. So before we go any further, does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, feel free to raise your hand at any point as Jeff talks a little bit more about this topic. We can certainly make this interactive, but we certainly will have some time saved at the end for you to ask some additional questions.
Right. And so just to double check on time, I see we're looking at about 6:45 your time. So when should I end?
Well, you've got 30 minutes, and we can leave it for questions at the end.
Perfect.
But we kept this meeting to 1 full hour.
Thank you. I should be able to meet that metric. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So this evening, it's afternoon here, excuse me. This afternoon, I'm going to be speaking to you about the ASIS International School Security Standard. I co-chair that effort with about 60 professionals. My other chair is Drew Neckar, who is the former steering committee chair of the School Security Committee. These are the things we're going to be speaking about today. which is understanding what standards are and where standards come from. We're going to talk a little bit about the international school tragedy, and there's just, it's not just the United States, it's many other countries as well, and this is an international standard. And then talk about how to develop a risk-averse learning environment to harden facilities, but at the same time staying open and welcoming. They're not mutually exclusive concepts. So why was this project initiated? I don't know about you folks as professionals, but every time that a school shooting happens, I review it because some of my clients are schools. I work very closely with the Seattle Public School District and others, and a number of parochial schools. We find out after the fact that the situation was preventable. Either the offender advertised their intentions in social media, they told somebody what they were going to do, the signs were there and they just weren't seen. And Uvalde was a watershed moment for me. When Uvalde happened, and we see at the end that the shooter entered a door where the door lock hadn't been maintained in 2 years, and it was known that the door lock failed, and the shooter went in. We look at what recently happened at the parochial school in Nashville, and the shooter was on camera the whole time, but nobody was watching the camera. The shooter entered the building, shot out the glass in the vestibule, entered the building, and, had there been, proper reinforced glass, had there been a dual locking mechanism in the vestibule, had somebody been monitoring the physical security system, even if it was on their personal cell phone, that incident might have not happened. So when Uvalde happened, I went and spoke with the standards folks at ASIS, and I assist them in what is called a PIN, a project information notification. And because you may not be aware of this, but ASIS is a standards developing organization chartered under ANSI and ISO, the American National Standards Institute. So that's how this standard got started. But what I want to do is, why do we go into an ASIS standard? A standard can be prescriptive and not regulatory. The adoption of a standard is up to whatever organization looks at it and says, you know what, they like this standard. We see it a lot in other aspects of security. For example, quality management, ISO 9001. A lot of manufacturing firms adopted ISO 9001 as a baseline for quality management. There's also standards around risk management, ISO 31000, security management, ISO 28000. And we look at these as prescriptive, but if you adopt it, then you're obligated to it, right? But if you don't adopt it, it's fine. It's out there. ASIS has an amazing body of knowledge within its members, and especially for standards that we create, things like the workplace violence standard, the business continuity standard, the recently released cannabis security standard, the risk assessment standard, the senior executive security executive standard. All these standards are applicable to our industry and, and help professionals to be smart about what they do. So standards are important because it is a consensus-based process. Now, I'm going to talk to you about our team, but it's 60 professionals with 60 opinions. And, although it's a bit of a lengthy process, we've got the involvement of globally established experts that are helping to create this standard, that is going to be widely accepted once it hits the street. It is, you know, it's not the Jeff Slotnick show or the Drew Neckar show. It's definitely a consensus, you know, where folks discuss things, a starting point draft is created, and so on. So, you know, the standards development process, and we'll talk about where we're at, a project is identified and whether it's needed. A technical working group is formed that creates a starting point draft. Then a technical committee is recruited. And it's not just ASIS members. There's many other people that can make up technical committees. And in our committee, we have a number of participants. We have people that are like us from security management. We have school administrators. We have school resource officers involved. And not just from the United States. We have representation from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. We have behavioral and mental health professionals. So a name you might know is Josh Valines. And we have Dr. Dewey Cornell, one of the most forward-thinking behavioral threat management people in the world, and they work closely with ATAP. We have the American Society of Civil Engineers are participating. We have DHS-CISA and their school security office. We have the Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center and their representative. So we also have crisis management and emergency management folks. So we have a very, very well-rounded group, which leads us to what's in the standard. When we first started this, we intended it to be strictly a physical security standard, a subset of the Physical Asset Protection Standard, the PAP. But what we found in discussion is really we needed 3 annexes: physical security, behavioral threat assessment and management, and emergency operations. You know, those 3 things, they all kind of go hand in hand and are reflective of risk in an organization. The front end of the document is the programmatic elements, what we call the management side of things. How do you plan to use the standard? How do you implement it? What tools and practices are needed? For example, one of the things early on in the document is the need to conduct a thorough risk assessment. Now, we're not going to write a risk assessment in here. We're going to refer back to the ASIS risk assessment standard for that. And if any of you have questions as I'm going along, feel free to raise your hand. So where are we at today? The annexes have all been developed. We broke off into 4 separate working groups for the management document, the physical security document. Mike Rosen led the physical security group. Dr. Cornell and Josh Valines led behavioral threat management. And a gentleman that you may not know, but he is an ASIS member, a gentleman named Guy Bleisner, championed the emergency management group. We all came back together a couple of months ago, and we put the first draft on the table. We are now in our second draft, and we're going through all the comments in the second draft. Hopefully, we should be wrapping up with that mid-May, at which time we will open up for public comment, which is a required part of the process, and then get our 3rd round of comments in. We anticipate completion, and again, this is fuzzy based on how many comments we get and how much interest in people responding during the open comment period. But we're looking at late 3rd quarter to late 4th quarter 2024. So when we talk about the international school crisis, you know, I don't know if any of you have been involved in a school shooting, but the impacts of these events go way beyond the school. They have national impacts. They have regional impacts. the families that are involved go to church or synagogue or mosque. They're part of our communities, and so everybody gets touched. What we find out after the fact is that many school violence events were preventable. School principals are often the security champion within their school buildings. But really, a school principal is an educator. They're not a security professional. So, they either depend on somebody else or some of the products that are provided in other organizations and best practices. And sometimes they read them, sometimes they don't. But we've got to have that basis of knowledge for employing a security program. I've been involved in security, if I count my military time, for almost 30 years. But I don't know everything there is to know about security. And you take a school principal that's worried about student performance and student interaction and teachers and teacher performance and maintenance of the building and everything else, and you can imagine where security lies on the table. So, by providing this standard, we give them a tool, a reference, something they can look at and say, this is what the best practice is. This is what I should be doing. The whole goal is to develop a risk-averse learning environment where we can harden facilities and make staff and students aware of risks and develop procedures for a safer place. Now, keep in mind, having a safe and secure building does not go in the face of being open and welcoming. You can have both, right? It's a lot of knowledge and it's a lot of work to get us there. So, risk. There's a lot of impacts to risk. We have all dealt with risk in one way or another. The impact of risk, especially in the school environment, can be very costly. So I wanted to give you some numbers so that you understand what it is that we're looking to mitigate here. Ignoring risk is expensive. I mean, you look at some of the numbers here. Parkland, 25 million, 130 million, and 3 million. So, basically $158 million was the cost of the Parkland incident. Long Beach was 13 million. Uvalde, they're going to push down that school and they're going to build a different school elsewhere. $60 million and then another 22 million in private donations. In 2019, which is the latest year that we have numbers for, the economic cost of school shootings alone was estimated to be $810 billion. So a lot of risk there and a lot of impact, not to mention all the lives lost. So a school in Brooklyn is very different than a school building in Nebraska. And a school building in Washington State, in rural Washington State, is very different than a school in a downtown organization in Dallas, Texas. So we have to be able to create a culture of security and have a standard that's equally applicable in all those scenarios. And I will tell you that a school in Latin America is very different from a school in the United States or in Canada. We have different laws and things. Having a risk-averse learning environment and being open and welcoming are not mutually exclusive concepts. And each school building has its own culture and the way that it likes to do things. And we have to be cognizant of that. I get asked this question a lot by school industry professionals. We've spoken with the National Association of School Principals and the National Association of Elementary School Principals and school counselors. And the first thing they say is, well, I don't want my campus looking like an armed camp. And I said, it doesn't have to. And I asked them, I said, have you ever been to Disney World? And they say, yeah, we've been to Disney World. I said, Was security obtrusive? Did you feel unwelcome? Was it like an armed camp to you? And it's no, it was open and welcoming. We had a great time. My kids enjoyed it. I'm like, okay, great. You were in a secure envelope from the time you entered the parking lot, or if you came in on a shuttle, within 10 feet of that ticket booth, you were in a secure environment. But the security was unobtrusive to you. You didn't see it. The same thing in Las Vegas. You know, we all go to Las Vegas. We have a good time. But if you ever you want to spoil your time, look up in Las Vegas and you'll see 100 cameras directly above you, watching everything that you do. And security is, you know, every 20 feet, whether plain clothes or uniform. But it doesn't take away from the experience that we have at some of the finer hotels and restaurants and things that we go to in Las Vegas. It's important that we're educating not just the school building, but staff, students, and parents on what they should expect. We see technology as a force multiplier. You know, I just came back from ISC West, and everything these days, everybody says they got AI, right? and artificial intelligence and machine learning are good things, and there are some reputable AIs out there. But we're at the point now where we can take an AI and upload it to a modern camera that is capable of detecting a firearm in somebody's hand, or a bat, or a knife, or a long gun. And as soon as it detects it, it takes fractions of a second to lock doors, initiate a lockdown, communicate a message, notify law enforcement. Instead of waiting for security, I've walked into a lot of school buildings where your first shout out to security is a sign on the door that says all visitors report to the office, and it's 300 feet inside the building. We accept things on an elementary school or high school campus that we would never accept in a corporate environment, right? So we need to push, you know, as we say, detection, delay, response. We need to push security out to that furthest envelope, out to the street, out to the parking lot, out to the sports field, and give people the means to communicate two-way, the ability to hear and be heard, you know, and understood when they're in danger or when they see something so they can notify somebody. So technology is a force multiplier. And the status of integrated systems today is just amazing. And we can do things. We can send a message to a cellular phone. We can send a message to a computer. We can send it to a call center. We can send it to law enforcement, all at the same time. Multimodal, notify people so they can get out of harm's way. So this is my last slide in this presentation. This is kind of where we're at on the project and what's going on and what we're looking at. I am available to answer any questions you might have. I will tell you it's a very professional group that we're working with. And even though it's 60 people, everybody is very collegial, is very good about stating their opinion and not being offensive. So let's go from there.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Jeff. So open it up. Questions? Anybody? Feel free to raise your hand or just go ahead and jump in.
I'll ask about that 130 million for the cost, the federal. How did that wind up costing them 130 million?
It's you know, let me go back to that slide real quick. You're talking about Parkland?
Yeah.
That was education, building repairs, educating law enforcement. I mean, there were a number of things that happened in Parkland post-event, as well as, you know, counseling for staff and for students. You know, all those things play into that expense. It's not just physical expenses.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can tell you, we had a shooting here in Seattle at the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle in 2006. And the extended cost of that event was literally millions of dollars because of the 7 people that were in that building that were shot at or shot and killed had friends, relatives, kids that they went to synagogues. The synagogues were impacted. The impact went far beyond the actual location of the shooting. So these, I had the opportunity to contribute to the workplace violence standard, and that was something that I worked on, was the threat and the response to the threat and its community impact, because it goes way beyond where the actual shooting took place.
Thank you, Jeff. So I got a question for you. Will this standard ever become a mandatory type of approach, or what's the likelihood that standards will be required by schools or higher ed or any school educational location?
An interesting question. It's something I'd personally like to see. We haven't had a fire in a school since 1953. And we have the NFPA now, and NFPA standards are regulatory standards. They're not just prescriptive, they're regulatory. That takes governmental involvement in the United States, to be incorporated into federal law. Could it possibly happen? I believe so. But I think, we've got to get the standard out there first for voluntary acceptance. And I think once people become familiar and comfortable with the standard, it could serve as a legislative model for states that don't have a security program, or for the federal government as an alternative, when they're looking for real solutions to eliminating violence in our schools.
Thank
And
you.
they've been talking about making active shooter one of the CFRs, right? The Code of Federal Regulations, and I think we've been holding our breath for that to happen, but it hasn't.
Yeah, I would agree with you. This is my opinion. This is not ASIS's opinion. I think once legislators get a look at this standard, I think it could serve as a model for legislation. It could be incorporated in toto as legislation, but that's going to take some lobbying, and I don't know if I'm up for that, but there may be others. But I will certainly support that and speak out in behalf of that. One of the reasons that I saw this is I got very frustrated. The discussion, and again, this is my opinion. This is not ASIS. I want to be very clear on that. The rhetoric that happens after a school shooting. Well, it was the police officer. Well, it was the gun. Well, it was this. We need more magnetometers. I'm sorry. If you're waiting to screen somebody to magnetometer, they're already either right at your front door or they're inside your front door, and it's too late. We need to be confronting people that have violent intentions before they act. When they post that on social media, when they communicate a threat to somebody, we need to stop it at the parking lot. We need to stop it at the street and not wait for it to get into the building.
Thank you. Anyone else on the call? I have a question for Mr. Slotnick.
All right, folks. So I appreciate the kind and thoughtful questions. Obviously, I'm a hell of a presenter because nobody is asking many questions. So it must have been a thorough presentation.
You soaked it all up.
No, I do thank you, Jeff. I know we had twice as many people register for it, and things come up, so I do apologize. But you have certainly enlightened me about school safety. In fact, I kind of cover a lot of active shooter situations in my current role, and so a lot of this is similar, especially the risk scenarios. But thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you making yourself available to us all the way from the Pacific Coast here in the East Coast. So with that, unless anyone has anything else, I will wrap us up a little bit early tonight. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. Have a great evening, folks, and go enjoy supper. I don't have
Thank
to
you,
worry about
Jeffrey.
mine for a few more hours yet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Take care. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the